Today on Vantage Revival, we watch a 2004 horror film directed by Fruit Chan, starring Miriam Young as a woman on a dark journey of reclaiming her youth. But how far will she go to feed her hunger for beauty? Dumplings, now playing on Vantage Revival. Okay, so I think we should start off with, have you ever eaten a dumpling before?
I've eaten a regular dumpling before, yes.
Do you still want to eat dumplings?
You know what? I've got dumplings in my freezer. I think I'm about to throw them out. Because I don't know what they'd be putting in it these days now.
True enough. So how about you take the lead on this one? What did you think of dumplings?
I don't know where you want me to start, to be honest with you.
I guess maybe just your first impressions. Like, what did you think when it started? What were you getting yourself into?
So when it first started, I don't know. The thing is I don't watch a whole lot of movies in other languages where I have to read the English subtitles.
Fair.
But it makes me think of one that I am going to show you in the future. So that this was helpful.
Okay.
But I don't know if I just was confused or if it wasn't known yet. But the first thing I definitely thought was like, is there something in this dumpling? Well, obviously the movie's called Dumplings. So I was like, what is this thing in the dumpling that we should be concerned about? I had no idea what was going on.
Right.
And then basically what happens is this girl's making this dumplings. Her name's Aunt May. And a older, not even old, but an older lady comes and she says, I hear you make expensive dumplings. And she spits out this dumpling right away. So first of all, one of my first thoughts was, why is this rich lady in this rundown, gross part of, where was this all?
This was in China, Hong Kong. Yeah.
Okay, Hong Kong. What's in these dumplings that's brought this lady here? And does this lady know what she's eating? And then once we find out that what they are eating is, in fact,
fetuses. Human fetuses.
Yes, human fetuses, baby fetuses. Baby, human babies is what I meant to say.
Not the adult fetuses.
Human babies. I literally had to think to myself on 4 or 5 different occasions, okay, she does know what's happening. And then she would do something, I'm like, she doesn't know what's happening. She just thinks that she's just, I don't know. Very confusing. She becomes youthful. Her husband still hates her. That's the movie.
I think it's a lot deeper than that. That's a very quick highlighted approach to it. I think what you're talking about when you mean, like, did she know what was in it? Did she not know what was in it? I think that she always knew what was in it. There was no secret, I feel. But I think the deeper she got in it, the more she saw the process of it, it would hit her differently each time.
Yeah.
There was a line, actually, that they said I thought was really powerful was Aunt May, trying to convince her to eat the dumplings and not worry about it, said, think of the results, not what it was. And I think that is very similar to a lot of things that we have even in our own day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
You think about the clothes you wear, the food you do eat.
The skincare products that cost immense amounts of money.
And there's also, there's circumcised skin in skincare products that we use. Mm-hmm. The idea of eating a dumpling that was a fetus, is that any different than what we're already doing with other things we have in our life right now?
100%.
That we put these blinders on and we go, what, we don't see it? It doesn't bother us? It's okay. I mean, look at, again, with clothing and the sweatshops. It's been years and years talking about how these sweatshops exist, especially in Asia. And yet a good chunk of people still wear the same clothing they've been wearing forever, knowing that it comes from a sweatshop. So does knowing where something comes from really bother us when it comes down to the results you're getting at the end?
And I think this movie, once we get closer to the end, I think we could come back to this conversation and connect it a little bit more. But this movie definitely shows that we don't care. As long as the results are showing, as long as our skin looks ageless and our hair is done nicely and the clothes we have on have a Gucci symbol attached to them, we don't care where it comes from because it's all about outward appearance that matters to us and we're not caring about where we're going. One of the things I found kind of interesting was the way they kept showing the husband eating that I have no idea what it's called.
Yeah, so he was eating balut, which is a duck egg that has been fertilized. Yeah. So it has a baby duck growing in it, and then you boil the egg with the baby duck inside, and then you eat it like a boiled egg.
Yes. So it's funny because 3 days ago, I was just scrolling through YouTube Shorts, and it was a lady that I frequently watch. She's like an Asian, I'm not exactly sure where from, lady, and she cooks and eats all of these like exotic foods. And one of them was this. And this is the first time I've ever seen it. And so many people in the comments were just like, this is gross. Why are you doing this? And I actually commented to defend, I know I'm just one person, but I was like, and there's people in our countries that eat human beings. Like, I'm being dramatic, but there's things that we eat that I'm sure other people are like, why do you do that? Let's go down to the great pineapple on pizza debate. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, like, or religion, pork for Muslims and whatnot. And
if you don't eat it, cool. You don't have to eat it. But that is something that culture, they eat. And if they enjoy it, don't go, ew. How would you feel if you worked and you slaved over a meal all day and then you served it to somebody and they said, ew, because it's something you enjoy eating? It's just not fair. But I like the way that they connected that to the point where Mrs. Lee was eating dumplings with fetuses in it, where Mr. Lee was eating eggs with chicken fetuses in it. I think that was a really cool connection.
Yeah, and on top of that too, especially with Balut, it has another side of it that it's also an aphrodisiac.
Oh.
And this movie is a sexual movie as well.
Yes.
And I mean, it's about having your youth brought back and the joy of that. So I think that also was another kind of double-sided angle to having that balut there, was how sexual Mr. Lee was and how that was a driving force of his life, it appeared to be. And I think the balut was kind of a good starting point for conversation when it comes to the symbolism of what that symbolized.
Of what they were both trying to do.
Yeah. Bring back their youth through different ways. One through beauty and youngness, and one through keeping your sex drive alive.
Yeah. So one thing that happens in this movie, basically Aunt May is kind of by recommendation only. So a lady comes running up with her 15-year-old daughter and says, you have to do an abortion on my daughter. To kind of fill in the backstory, Aunt May was a doctor in China and she specialized in surgeries where nobody bled. So someone recommended that this lady go and take her daughter to get an abortion from Aunt May. And Mrs. Lee was looking for a very rare fetus to eat to make her...
And by rare, kind of a late-term fetus. That's not usual.
Yes. While they're there, Aunt May says she's not going to do this procedure. It's too risky. She's too far along.
She could die.
And yes, and she doesn't want anything bad to happen. When they're doing this, the mother starts saying, you need to beg, you need to plead. Her father did this to her. And I can't live my life knowing that I have a grandchild who's also my stepchild. Aunt May says, try the black market. The mother responds with, you are the black market. And that brought me to thinking about... A, how lucky we are to live in Canada with the abortion laws that we currently have, and B, how this is very representative of what could happen if our laws changed and or what's happening in the States, where if somebody is looking for an abortion, there's many reasons for it, including being raped by your father. But on top of that, they aren't easily obtainable and legal to get. They are going to be black market, back alley abortions happening, and it's going to lead to worse scenarios than just getting an abortion.
Yeah, and in this case, the girl ended up dying. She did not survive the abortion, dying later on that day. Yeah, it's a really touchy subject, and I used to feel one way about the abortion standing, to be honest, and now I kind of feel a little bit different. So
what was the way you did feel?
I always felt that abortion should be the choice of a woman. And I still, it's a weird one because I still feel that way, but I think it's a bigger issue or question than just, it's not that simple. And I think that with abortion, a lot of things are overlooked. One, I think sometimes that it's too quick of an answer, that maybe abortion isn't the right answer for everyone, even if they think it is. Maybe there is a benefit to keeping a child, and maybe not in this case, but in other ones that abortions are being utilized, maybe there is a positive to keeping a baby. Like, it shouldn't just be the go-to. I also think that men should have a bigger right. As much as it is a woman's body, it is the man's child too, and I think that gets overlooked a lot. And I can't imagine being in that scenario where I was with someone and they wanted to abort a child and I didn't, like the mental stress that would put on me, So I think that's overlooked a lot in our society, and that it's just seen as a woman's issue or a woman's right, when it's a lot bigger than that, it's a lot deeper than that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I struggle with that one. I mean, I'm lucky that I don't have to really deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful. And I kind of keep out of it because I don't have to deal with it. But I feel bad for all parties involved. I don't think it's a simple women's right only debate.
Say the woman wanted to keep it, but the male didn't. Should that be just as...
Yeah, that's just as... I think that's the same kind of scenario. That's still a hard decision, and what is the right one. And again, it's going to boil down to each couple and how much you value your relationship over the situation at hand. Miss Lee wanted to have a baby, and they never could. They tried, and they never could. And that is one of the big factors as to why she's hard on herself. Not only does she feel old, but the fact she can't have a baby is ruining her relationship to her.
Yeah.
And Mr. Lee is cheating on her and does get his assistant pregnant and wants her to keep that baby. I think that is, again, another touchy subject. And it just shows that we all struggle with different things. He broke his leg. They don't say how.
Oh my God,
but
I know.
Mr. Lee broke his leg. Oh. He's in a full-on cast on literally half of his leg.
Yep.
And then a day later, he's walking around without a cast and has sex with Aunt May.
Yeah. So all of this is kind of happening at one spot. Well, his foot's broken. He has sex with his wife for the first time in who knows how long. The next day, he's having sex with Aunt May. And then the mother kills the father. And then they're searching that girl's apartment, but then they're searching Aunt May's apartment because she moved out, and...
Well, they're searching Aunt May's because she would have told the truth of what happened.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. But it was just like, all of it was just kind of like, where are we right now? Like, I'm so confused at what timeline at what point in real life we were in the movie. Because like you say, one day he was literally in a bed with his leg raised up in a full body cast. And the next day, he was having sex with, well, that night he was having sex with people. He don't fuck with no cast. He does fuck with a cast, I guess. But the next day, he was having this crazy wild monkey sex with Aunt May. The end of the movie kind of confused me, except for the very end, obviously.
I think that they were trying to close up a lot of stories, and they kind of rushed at that point. Yeah. Maybe not the smoothest option, but that's just, let's close up these storylines we opened. Let's just shut them down, right? Yeah. For a movie that deals with such hard subject matter that most people can't watch, I think it really touched upon these subjects and brought them together without making it seem like a checklist. Yeah. The story flowed the entire time, and it didn't feel like, okay, what's the next crazy thing that's going to happen? And it's like, no, this crazy shit does happen, and it's a part of this world. And unfortunately, we're showing it to you. Yeah. So one thing I want to talk about that's not a deep subject at all is the fashion in this movie.
Okay. Can I guess something?
Yes.
I don't know if this can be the same thing. Are we talking about the fact that months and months and months pass by, yet they're still wearing the same fucking outfit?
So I have a theory with that. I'll jump to my thing first. I do love the fashion. Like, I want those watermelon pants that she was wearing.
Please no.
I want them so bad. But I know this movie, it's really colorful. Like, the fashion itself is really colorful for how dark and sinister the movie really is. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that kind of polar opposite, kind of distract you a little bit from the horror that was happening. Yeah. So I have two theories with the clothing being the same kind of throughout the movie. One is that they screwed up with editing and they filmed a bunch of stuff at one time and kind of decided later on to splice it in different parts, realizing they wanted to have it separated, not all together, and they just didn't bother to change clothing. That's one thing that could have happened.
Which is most likely what happened, I believe. Or
maybe it was being realistic. In a week or 2 weeks or even a month, how often do you repeat wearing something?
A lot.
Exactly. So I think maybe that could have been what it was too. I mean, it's kind of refreshing to see a movie where not every scene is a different outfit for no reason. Like, as if we all have 1,000 outfits we wear in 1 month.
You're right. It could be like a realism thing. There was one scene where Aunt May was wearing the same pants but a different shirt.
I noticed that too. So
it could just be, she just has 3 pairs of pants that she wears.
And it's a very small place she lives in. So I can only imagine. And when she moved out, she only had 1 bag. So
yeah, that is true. Here's the thing too. She's halfway through this transformation. You can physically see that she's getting younger. Yeah. And she's halfway through and she's complaining about how she needs more stuff done. Now hear me out. She kind of grew out her hair a little bit, didn't backcomb it as much, maybe put on a sundress. The transformation probably would have been complete. She probably didn't need to eat as many fetuses as she did because literally she dressed like she was 70. She had the hairstyle of a 70-year-old, but her face looked like she was 20. The one scene she actually looked good in was the scene where she smelled like fish.
Dinner party scene.
And everybody was like, it smells like fish. And then she gets up and leaves. And a second later, they're like, oh, it doesn't smell like fish anymore. Can only works that way. But
I mean, some smelly people.
Well, yeah, but when they leave, their smell usually lingers. I'm talking about myself. So, I mean, like, I know firsthand that when you leave a room, your smell lingers, especially if the whole freaking room is going off about how nasty it smells in there. She really filled up the place.
If she had just dressed differently or done her hair differently, she wouldn't have had to eaten so many dumplings.
Yeah.
And that she kind of got obsessive over eating them.
Yes.
But then here's a question for you. Is that not a parallel of just the beauty industry in general? Look at people with cosmetic surgery. They do a couple and they look fine. They do 50 more and it's terrifying.
That is true, yeah.
And then they never stop. So I think it was more, again, kind of shine that light on the world of vanity than anything else. Then, yeah, you got what you wanted, but you still want more.
This whole movie is trying to represent that. And like I say, coming to the end, which maybe we'll discuss soon here, it really is a true correlation to how people are in the real world and how far they'll go. And obviously it's like a euphemism maybe of what it means. And obviously I don't think that a whole heck of a lot of people go to the extremes that this lady went to at the end of the movie to continue with this beauty regimen. It's a really good synonym to what's actually happening in real life, just on a lower standard. And if this movie were, maybe recorded by James Charles and it's him spending millions of dollars on care products or something, maybe the world would look at beauty and health that way as well. But they just did a great job of creating a movie that is very similar to what is going on in the real world. And when was this movie?
2004.
So that's like right after early 2000s.
It's almost 20 years ago.
Early 2000s is like the big boom of all of that stuff. And then like the late 2000s is like, as of like 2014, 2015, it's just been a multi-billion-dollar empire. And you know what? The nice thing about it is that Aunt May doesn't care how much money someone's going to give her. If you fuck with her, she's done with you.
Have you ever seen the show My Feet Are Killing Me?
Once or twice, my mom loves that show.
They do a lot of skin grafting.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I've never seen skin grafting before.
Mm-hmm.
I always assumed that it was taking skin from a different part of your body, like from your butt or something, and just taking it off and sewing it on. Like, I thought that was skin grafting and like, don't touch it for a year kind of thing. I didn't realize that it was stem cells and that it literally is this, not even paper, like rice paper thin stem cells, and they place it over the wound, and those stem cells are able to heal and create that new skin or whatever they're trying to replace.
Yeah.
And I mean, this kind of goes hand in hand because fetuses are stem cells, and eating them in this dumpling form brought youthfulness. We may not eat them, but we use these stem cells to put our skin back on our feet.
Yeah, exactly.
Or create an ear or whatever it might be. And there's a lot of discussion about the morality, I guess,
mm-hmm.
of using stem cells. This kind of goes hand in hand with abortions. They're using fetuses and taking the stem cells to create other things. And is it morally wrong? What do you think?
What happens to that baby once it gets aborted? What happens to that fetus once it either gets put into a dumpling or it gets... just kidding. Or it gets used to potentially repair somebody of life currently. I think that if there's something that can be, and this sounds so bad, but like repurposed from what happened, why not make that happen? Why not use these like lives that weren't able to live to create something on people? And skin grafting is becoming way more used now with transgender patients, because in order to do a bottom surgery, you need to do skin grafting. It's going to become more used. Personally, if I needed it, I would not be affected by it.
I don't know much about abortions or how they're done, but in this case with the abortion sequence with the 15-year-old girl, mm-hmm. they said it took 18 hours for it to go through, and I think that is crazy. I can't imagine going through 18 hours of like waiting and the pain, and how do you keep yourself sane, sitting in that position for 18 hours waiting for the baby to come out.
Yeah, and I think as someone who does know a little bit about abortions, and not everything, so maybe I could even be wrong, that seem more like a forced labor rather than an abortion.
Well, that's kind of what they said, that this is not a traditional way. because it wasn't using any drugs to kind of force upon the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
It was to create a fake birth, essentially.
And that's why it's like, if the baby has a possibility of coming out alive, that's not an abortion, in my opinion. And maybe that's what they were meaning, but they just kept calling it an abortion or whatever. I've been to an abortion with one of my friends way in the past, and the longest wait was waiting for her to be called into the room. Other than that, it was probably like an hour and a half total of her. I know she had to get a ultrasound. She had to do this, that, and the other. And they go up, they snip, all the little pieces apart. They stick a vacuum up there and they suck it out. So this very much was just an induced early labor that this lady still had to go through all of that stuff. And because it was so early and the baby was not ready to come out, is it possible that she was in this pain for 18 hours? Yeah, probably. That baby was not ready to come out. So yeah, it was probably pretty painful. I just don't understand what happened and how she died, because it was more of a labor than an abortion.
There was a portion of the movie where she talks about how this baby was potentially too big, and that by playing around up there, they could puncture parts of her body. Yeah. And I think that's just what happened, right? And the bleeding didn't stop, and she just bled to death afterwards. And she even could have had some sort of condition, right? Where if the bleeding wasn't dealt with, it didn't coagulate and just keeps bleeding, right? So they didn't really go into great detail about that. I don't think obviously that was the main point of the movie, but I think it was a fair representation of the tragedies that could come from back alley abortions.
Oh, 100%. And you know what? Thinking about it too, she could have had an episiotomy, which is when your vaginal hole tears to your anal hole, and she could have just bled out because it wasn't stitched back up or dealt with, right? So
yeah, a lot of different things could have happened, and either way, she still ended up dying, sadly. So there is a movie, I can't remember what it's called now. It came out maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, and I hated it. I did watch it, and it's about abortions.
Okay.
And it's a pro-life movie. I wish I had the name of it, but whatever. Maybe I'll add it to the list of things that we can watch together. Because they talk about what you just explained with the abortion, how it happens in the clinic nowadays. And sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's funny. They're about to abort the baby, and they have the ultrasound. They're watching it as it's happening, and the little buzzsaw thing that's going to chop it up is coming close to the baby, and the baby just like moves away from it, and it was like, oh my god, like it was like present and aware. And this is supposed to be like a real movie.
It's supposed to be humorous, yeah.
It's not supposed to be humorous. It's supposed to be like abortion shouldn't be a thing. Look, the baby knows it's about to die, and but just seeing a CG baby like waving and blinking and like it just. Well, maybe we'll have to watch it. It doesn't.
Yeah,
it's so bad. So I guess what I'm trying to say with this is I'm glad that this movie again kind of took things into like a real matter. Like it didn't do anything that was joking when it came to this subject matter. It was serious the entire time. It did have real threats and real consequences for everyone's actions and decisions in this movie. I don't think anyone got away freely with everything they did. Even Aunt May at the end, when the police find her house, she ends up having to leave, and she becomes like a fish worker. I don't think that's what she wanted, right? So
100%.
I think everyone kind of not got what they deserved, but they all had to pay. They all had to pay for something, which leads to the next question of paying for things. Is Miss Lee finds out that her husband's personal assistant is pregnant and wants to keep the baby, and she finds the assistant in a fertility clinic and offers her a lot of money to abort her baby. And again, this kind of question of morality. I'm sure there are people who are willing to trade their baby in for money. It already does happen. People are surrogate mothers, and that essentially is trading your body to host a baby, right?
Back in the day, there's tons of stories about Craigslist, people selling their babies online. And there was a person who, I can't remember the whole story, but essentially a couple thought they adopted a baby online. It turns out that they just purchased a baby online. So there was no legalities. They'd never done it before, so they didn't know any better. They paid money, they got a baby, and once actually all the legalities got figured out years and years and years later, it turns out that they never did officially adopt this child. They literally bought a baby on Craigslist. And so those things do happen. People who don't want babies, who can't get abortions because of where they live or whatever.
Or they see a paycheck.
Or they see money and they realize, oh, babies can be made again. They all do those things because it's important. And I think that's what's like so scary about it. And that's why maybe I am also a little pro-choice, is because like, do we really want, you know, there's these girls who are drug addicts or whatever, and they decide they don't want their babies because who knows they're going to end up in dumpsters, which...
That also happens.
Wouldn't we just want them to not have to seclude that baby to that life in the first place? And I know years and years and years ago, there was an app called Whisper. I don't know if you ever heard about it. It was big when I was in high school. It was essentially, you took a background picture, you put a quote on it. It was all completely anonymous, except it wasn't anonymous because it like gave your general location. And so if you post something about the school you're in, obviously people are going to narrow it down to you. Anyway, people found me. It's fine. But, but I remember this one Whisper quote, and it said, my parents wanted to abort me, but the doctor talked them out of it. They said, I'd rather never been born than live with parents who don't want me. And that's so true in my eyes. And that's what really opened my eyes to like abortions way back in the day, was the fact that if you don't want a baby, a doctor telling you that you shouldn't get an abortion, a law telling you that you shouldn't get an abortion, isn't going to make you all of a sudden want this baby. If you don't want a baby, you don't want a baby. And yes, there's other options. Yes, there's other options. There's adoption, there's this, there's that. But some people just don't do that. And now they're trying to raise a child they don't want. And it's worse on that child's life than just never being born.
And on the flip side, though, there are some times where I don't think a baby solves any sort of marital problems, that kind of stuff. But there are some people who may be scared to have a baby and then end up loving being a parent or end up loving that child beyond belief.
Oh, 100%. So it's not 100% of people.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And again, that's the hard part. It does go both ways. I don't think anyone knows which way it's going to land. But I don't think every parent that questions if they want to have a baby or if they'll love a baby will automatically keep that feeling forever.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think the same way too, people that want to have a baby and want to love it then have problems afterwards, you know, and they regret having a baby. So
honestly, as much as I want to be a mom and I want a lot of kids and I have wanted to be a mom my whole life, I am terrified for what happens if I have a baby and I realize it's not what I wanted. What if I'm overselling this life for me and then I have kids and I'm like, I don't like this anymore. Am I going to regret it? I don't know. I hope not. I don't think so. But I always have that fear in the back of my head being a mom. And I think that anybody looking into being a parent is going to have not a fear of maybe not loving your child, but just like, I know I'll love my child. That's not what I'm saying. Just a fear of like, was it the right path for me to take?
That's fair. Here's another thing too that, again, with consequences, that Miss Lee didn't even realize is that her quest for beauty and that vanity ended up killing that teenage girl, and she never knew it.
Yeah.
But her choices, indirectly or directly, affected someone else's life completely. And I think that's a great, I guess, metaphor for life, of that we're all chasing our individual dreams or aspirations, but we have no idea what our choices are doing to the people around us.
Well, I mean, I hate to like take away from your nice little metaphor there, but do you really think, honest to God, do you really think that if someone went on the black market to find Aunt May to do an abortion for them and Aunt May really said no, you don't think that they'd go to the next black market person to get an abortion?
I don't think it's that easy. You know what I mean?
The next black market person.
I don't think it's that easy. Just go knock on the next door and be like, hey, you want to do this for me?
Abortion.
Yeah, no, I think especially in this movie, this was a only resort. And that was made kind of painfully clear with how much she was begging for this. Yeah. That this may be the only option for them at that moment. Especially with how late it was coming into the term, right? Yeah. So, no, I do think that if she had not done it, the teenage girl would not have died. She would have had other problems, but not have died. So, yeah, I think, again, everything kind of happens for a reason. And speaking of kind of the quotes again, there was another one in here. It said, we all have fates we can't escape. We must only live our best today. Yep. And I felt that was, again, really powerful. And it's true. We have no idea what our future holds for us, how our actions will then define our fate. We have no control over that. It's just blindly moving forward. But the important thing is living in today. And it's funny, when I drove here to do this podcast, I was listening to the radio because it was like snowing. And I don't know, I find like, I don't listen to the radio all the time, but I find comfort like when I'm trying to focus on not dying on the road.
Someone's talking to you.
Having someone talk to me is just like a little bit more like relaxing, I guess, instead of listening to music. And they were talking to a therapist, and that's legit what he was talking about, was that we focus so much on the past and we get into these rotations of just reliving our past, which is completely pointless. It has nothing to do with right now in this very moment. Or on the flip side, we focus so much on our future and, oh, I'm going to do this in the future. I'm going to prep. I'm going to plan. I'm going to think about the things I don't have yet. And that is just so time consuming that you're not enjoying the moment and you're ruining the greatness of today with the stress of what's going to happen tomorrow or a year or 15 years from now.
Yeah.
When you have no idea what your fate will bring you in 15 years. So why are we thinking about that when right now you should be focused on the present and focused on what's good for you?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Everyone overlooks that.
Oh, I think so, but I think we're wired into overlooking that.
It's been put inside of us based off of our culture and our society, but I think it's really important to recollect and realize that we're making a mistake with our lives, that we're not focusing on today, and that is what's hindering us from being happy.
Oh, 100%, and it really comes into it too in the sense where, it's, oh, you're still single, when are you going to get a girlfriend? Oh, you got a girlfriend, when are you going to propose? When are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to have another kid? And
Are you talking to me? I feel like that's just you talking to me.
I mean, really though, I waited so long for you to get engaged, and now I'm like, when the fuck's the wedding? But in the sense of, it's like, it's forceful. It's like, it has to be happening so quickly. And if it's not happening quickly, then something's wrong with you. And that's what it's made to be. It's like every time something good happens in your life, you can't just enjoy. You can't just enjoy being engaged because now everyone's asking when's the wedding. You can't just enjoy being married because then everyone's asking when's kids. And that goes for everything in life. You just got a new job. When are you going to get a raise? Oh, you got a raise. When are you going to get a promotion? Oh, you got a promotion. When are you going to
get a new job?
Own your own company, right? Like it's never, no one can just accept and be happy for you in the moment. It's, oh, congratulations, you did it. What's next? And I think that's, since we're being asked that question so many times in so many different ways over and over again, it really is, how do we enjoy the moment when everyone's constantly asking what's next? You're always working on what's next to answer that person's question subconsciously. It sucks.
Yeah, and I think that for myself, I've been more aware of this, and I've been trying to, when I interact with somebody, try to stay away from those questions now, because I don't want someone to beat themselves up because they think like they have not achieved something or they have not changed enough since the last time I saw them. I really want to be just, how are you?
Yeah.
Are you happy? Are you good right now? Let's have some fun, and conversations are going to come up, and it's up to us. We want to discuss those things, but it's not going to be the main focus of, well, why haven't you achieved all your dreams in the last 5 months? You know what I mean?
That's how you always are. And I feel that too, because you are... That what you just said sounds so crazy hearing it, you explaining it, because the way you just, how are you? How are you in this very moment? How are you doing today? How have you been in the last week? Like let's reflect on the week, not the year. It's very reflective
of what's happening right now. I try to keep it within the nows. So
yeah, exactly.
It's a predetermined thought every time I interact with someone. So
yeah, definitely.
And here's something kind of interesting that I'm sure that we'll get around to, but there are 2 versions of this movie.
Oh God.
What?
Oh God.
What? Hold on. So this is the director's...
Was it Dumpling with Jennifer Aniston and the Patrick?
Stop. So this is like the full-on director's cut, full-length version. Mm-hmm. And there's also a movie called 3 Extremes, and it is a compilation anthology type movie where it has 3 segments. They do not connect, but it's just 3 of the top Asian horror directors brought forward these stories. And they asked Fruit Chan, who made this movie, to be one of the submissions for this anthology. And he decided to include Dumplings, but obviously it had to be a short. It couldn't be an hour-and-a-half movie.
Yeah.
He had to condense this movie to make like a 40-minute version. And the ending is completely different. Because they've removed a bunch of the other storylines to take away from the time, they had to come up with a different ending. And I don't know which ending I prefer, and I'd be interested in showing you the other ending, because it is very different, and it involves something that was not touched upon in this movie. But
there's a lot touched upon in this movie.
Yeah,
that's shocking.
Yeah, it really is. And most people only have seen the 40-minute version.
Oh, what?
Yeah, because the compilation movie it comes from is probably more successful than Dumplings itself, which is kind of shocking because I think Dumplings is great, but we'll get to our ratings in a second. So to have this completely different ending, I'm torn which one I like more, because the ending, she does end up getting the assistant to abort her baby, and she then continues on her life of eating fetuses
She
to
does it
stay
herself.
young, doing it herself. Yeah, they easily could have done, you know, a part 2, like. She becomes
She's
the
just
new
a fucking baby now.
It's like Benjamin Button with fetuses. But yeah, no, she becomes the new Aunt May, essentially. The one thing I did want to mention, though, is the actors in this movie. The girl who played Miss Lee is Miriam Young, and she is a really famous Chinese actress. So it was really cool to see her do this movie, because I've seen her in other movies.
Yeah.
And without giving anything away, she may be one of the movies we watch later on, because she does a lot of like comedies and stuff. So to see her in this role, very serious, and she was quite young too in 2004. Like, she's not that old. I think she did really amazing for being someone who's not old.
Yeah.
I think she did that, a really nice line of playing someone that was middle-aged and then getting her youth back. And then also Aunt May is played by Bai Ling, who actually does a lot of Hollywood movies. Like,
wow.
Yeah, I've seen her in tons of movies, and she may not be that successful because she's kind of crazy, but that's kind of what's fun about her, is that she's crazy. And I think this role kind of showed that she can go into that crazy kind of personality.
Yeah, she was like a little bit nutty.
So I love this cast. I think it was really good. The other thing I want to talk about is Aunt May really enjoys singing really everywhere. And every time she sang, I thought of you. Like, just randomly singing for no reason at the randomest of places. And
You know what? I actually do. I have a note here that says, "Oh my god, don't sing while the customers eat." Because I'm like, please stop, lady. Honestly, even thinking about being at my own job, like, I'm constantly just like singing what's going on. And it's so funny that you say me, because I'm like, oh my god, that bitch was so annoying when she was singing. And I'm like, fuck, I'm that bitch. I'm so annoying.
I think you owe everyone an apology, all your coworkers.
I owe everyone an apology. They love it, though. They love it. They ask me to keep going.
They do not. They do not.
Actually, one of my coworkers, he has this joke, and you know what? We were just talking about this the other day, because he's like, I've been saying it for 5 years, and you still don't know how it's said. But he's basically like, Marissa, it's 6 o'clock at night. The roosters aren't cooing anymore, or something like that. Basically, he's saying that no one needs to be woken up right now because it's the middle of the day, and I sound like a rooster cooing or whatever. And I'm like, whatever, you love it.
So let's get into our ratings.
Yes.
So like all of our movies, we have a point system. We have 5 categories worth 3 points each, with a max of 15 points. The first category is Edge of Your Seat. Did it keep you engaged?
So don't hate me for my ratings. Don't hate me for my ratings.
Why are you prefacing it with
because
that?
You're going to hate me for my ratings, because here's the reason. It's not like it's terrible, but it's definitely, this is probably the lowest I've rated this season.
We only had, this is the 3rd movie, so I mean...
But that's what I'm saying. Out of the 3, this is the lowest.
Really? You didn't say anything negative about anything?
But I saved some stuff for the ratings.
Okay, so I guess you'll start.
So the Edge of Seat is 1.5.
Okay.
So my thing was that there was no, but for me, there was no, real dramatic up-lead to the climax of the movie. It was pretty much this lady comes to eat dumplings. She's getting beautiful. Oh, and then some chick's getting an abortion, which also, no, that kind of ties in more with script. I'll get to that more with script. But yeah, what else is going to happen, right? Like, I mean, okay.
Really? You didn't question anything? Like,
no.
What's going to happen
next? I mean, okay, the assistant got pregnant. Okay, and that would be in climax, and my climax rating is higher, spoiler alert. But
by 0.5.
Yes, actually. But all I'm saying is that for me, there was no, I wasn't really I don't know. It's not like I was bored. I wasn't on the edge of my seat.
I gave it a 3. And the reason why I gave it a 3 is I love this movie because of the subject matter and that it does it tastefully. It goes a lot of ways, tastefully.
Oh, God.
But it does it, again, in a way that does not come off as gratuitous. Even though there's gross scenes, I guess you could say, it's still done in a realistic way that's not done in humor or jest, and it is keeping it factual is kind of how I felt. And the fact that I've seen this movie quite a few times, and I saw it in 2004, and I saw it today, and I still loved it. Like, how can I not give it a 3?
100%. No, it's fair.
Next is the acting.
I gave the acting a 2.5.
Hey.
And the only reason that I didn't give it a 3, and this sounds, I don't know if you're going to be mad about this, but it's because I have never really watched another movie with full Asian cast, fully in a different language,
like
all that stuff.
And,
I really don't have a way of gauging what is good and bad acting in those movies.
I mean, I think you can see when an actor's bad at acting.
But that's why I gave it a 2.5, right? Like, could these be the worst actors in
China?
In China? I don't know. But for me, they looked like they did a very good job. And it would be a full 3 if I had some sort of, like, if I saw a bad actor. And I was like, oh yeah, they're a bad actor.
I mean, I could definitely show you some. These were definitely good actors. And for me, they got a 3, which they fully deserved. Again, they're all really well known.
Yeah.
And again, with subject matter at hand and being able to convey those emotions and not do it in a cheesy way. Even when she was singing, it wasn't cheesy. It was maybe bad singing.
But it was her character.
But it was her character.
Yeah.
So yeah, full marks again for me for that one. Next is the script.
So I give the script a 1.5. So there was a few things. It did have a lot to do with just... I just didn't prefer it that way, but it's just crazy how, like, as there's one point in the movie where Mrs. Lee was leaving the apartment, and as soon as she steps off frame, the abortion, she's literally talking about, you're going to get me the perfect fetus, you're going to get me the perfect fetus, and as soon as she's leaving, the perfect fetus walks in. It was just a little bit too, like, convenient for me in that sense. And it happens again, which, like, I get the point of it, but it happens again when Aunt May and Mr. Lee had sex. He turns the corner, and Mrs. Lee comes up the stairs, and she's knocking on the door, and obviously Aunt May doesn't answer. And it's like all those things. I was like, it's just a little bit too, you say convenient, and it's almost like a little bit too corny for me that they're like, obviously that was intentional stuff, but it was just like, I didn't love that as much.
Completely agree. I think a lot of that's probably to save on time.
Yeah. Well,
get
100%.
the story moving and not wait a couple days to bring in that new character potentially, right? So,
yeah.
But I get that.
Yeah, there's just there's a few other things I can't think now. Like, I know that you're gonna be like, what does that have to do with anything? But even when Mr. Lee comes in, he's just like, oh, does eating babies really work? And it's like, you just had sex with your wife for the first time in however long because you found out that she's been eating babies, and like, no. It doesn't work. I'm just doing this to eat people. Like, I don't know. There was just a few things where I was like, oh my God, give it up.
Okay. That's fair. I gave it a 2.5. And the biggest factor for me was the broken leg situation.
Yeah, that was a bad one too. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's just a huge oversight. And I don't know how anyone can explain how that happens. Yeah. How it got better literally minutes later. So, or
in that same sense too, like, even if it wasn't just like it got better minutes later, a better way to script in that months had passed or weeks had passed or something, like a better transition than just them being in bed and then what appears to be the next morning he's making himself an egg or what is it called?
Balut.
A balut.
Yeah.
You know, like, they could have scripted something better, therefore being in the script category. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Next is the climax.
Well, we all know that I gave the climax a 2. I think that the climax was the best part of the movie, which typically is what they're trying to go for, but it really did play out as being like the best part of the movie, and that's why I'm very like curious to see what the ending is on the short film for it, because I really thought that they're tying in the whole, and this is what I was talking about at the beginning, they're tying in the whole women will do anything for beauty into literally paying to get your own fetus, and the last scene is her chopping the baby up and blood splattering everywhere, and then credits roll, right? Yeah. So, I mean, like, this baby wasn't a little, they show some baby fetuses at the beginning and they look like little gelatins the way they're sticking on the knife. But this was like a baby, right? So like she's gone full wacko. So yeah, I gave it a mid. I gave it a mid rating.
Yeah. I gave it a 2 as well. And I kind of agree with you that towards the ending and building up to the climax, there's a lot of storylines that get rushed and closed off. And I don't think it's as effective as it could be. And the fact that I have seen both endings and I can't decide which one I like more because they're both good in different ways. I almost feel like if they had found a way to include both endings, it would have been even better. But it would have been a lot. I feel like it would have been a lot. So, yeah, the climax of it deserved it too.
Yeah.
And last, would you watch it again?
It's very rare that I give this answer, I think. But I give it a 1.
Really?
I probably would not watch it again. But to me, it is also a lot to do with I'm not a subtitle movie watcher, which you very much are. Every movie we watch of yours has subtitles on it, and mine don't.
Because I feel like I'm deaf. Like, I watch your movies, and I'm like, what's their name? Like, Georgie, Jeanne. Like, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
right now,
and like,
no subtitles.
I 100% understand that. And for me, like, it is hard to keep up with everything I feel in these movies. And, like, for me, it's hard to watch movies where, like, if it was subtitles and an English movie, I might watch it again. But it's the fact that, like, I can't understand anything and I gotta watch the subtitles. And if I miss a subtitle, I could miss, like, a whole part of the story.
Well, I feel like you did really good. You did really good. I think you got the story.
I think so.
And, like,
that's
you got
why.
the gist of
I was
it.
like, the only thing I was confused about was if I missed something at the beginning where I was supposed to know that it was a fetus in there.
No, they kind of like kept it a little bit of a
exactly.
secret. Like,
so I felt good.
Is that shrimp? What is that?
I felt good that I pretty much caught everything. So yeah, but would I watch it again? Probably not.
That's fine. I mean, you're gonna watch the short version now.
I guess so, but I'm being forced to do that against my own will.
Lies.
I do want to see the alternative ending. For
yeah,
sure.
I think you would. I mean, again, this movie is like, how much can you enjoy with the subject matter that's at hand? Yeah. But I think it's interesting to see a different perspective, a different way to go about it. So I gave it a 3 because, again, I still fell in love with it after all these years. I can't fault it for anything that would make me not want to watch it again, especially with someone new and like showing off this movie because of the subject matter alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that still could be shocking and enjoyable for that merit alone. So my score is 12.5.
And mine was 7.5.
Which we're bad at math, so what is
that's
that?
20.
There we go. So that's our current highest movie so far. So
yeah.
Better go make those dumplings in your freezer.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to Vantage Revival. Please like, comment, and subscribe